Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. We are excited. I'm joined by Matt Haletic from the spun.com, the best sports aggregate, kind of where sports meets pop culture. He's joined me for many, many, many years, and we love having him on the program. And he's back now again. You need to make the Spun one of your favorites. It's been one of mine for a long time, and it should be for you. Matt, excuse me. I want to get into the Raiders are being intelligent but aggressive. And they have John Spytek has made it abundantly clear that is their new mantra. And I want to explain what an example of a team that could learn from them. TJ Watt is the Steelers. Him and Cam Hayward. Would you agree with that? I mean, that is who they are. It's the face of their franchise. TJ and Cam are at everything. They never miss anything. They are always in the community. They do charity. They never get in trouble. They mentor your young players. They are exactly what you want. They are the Max Crosby version of Steelers. And then they go and pay 150 million bucks for DK Metcalf. And a guy that they don't really know if he's going to fit the Steeler culture. And they bring this guy in, and a wide receiver is not going to impact this team as much as TJ Watt, and way overpay Metcalf and don't think about the locker room. Every guy in that locker room knows what every guy's getting paid. Bill Polian said on this podcast that that's part of being a GM that people don't understand. Every contract you give, everybody in that room is going to know how much he got paid. And you got to think about how is it going to impact my locker room. Now, I mean, I in the end, we'll see what happens. I don't think he goes anywhere, but you see a situation where TJ Watt clearly is upset. I don't blame him. When you look at what he values to the franchise, about DK Metcalf, this Steelers don't make a lot of blunders. This was a blunder. I'd love your thoughts.
I think also you have to take into account that he's probably not happy, or there was some indications from some reporters that he wasn't happy about the whole Aaron Rodgers situation too. And Cam Hayward wasn't either. I think a lot of guys, when you're part of a situation, an organization like the Steelers, where um, there's always been sort of that unit philosophy and everyone's part of a bigger culture, and now you have a player who, and you said on this podcast that the Steelers' approach is, listen, we want Aaron Rodgers, but we're not going to bend over backwards for him, but they're still waiting to see what he wants to do. And they still did host him on a visit. They are attempting to sign him. I think that situation probably leaves a little bit of a negative taste too, in his mouth. It's a part of the fun, not fun for necessarily for the GM, but it's part of the fascinating way of looking at how the NFL, no moves are made in a vacuum. And obviously, acquiring DK Metcalf is a move that you would think would help your offense, and you add a talented player no matter who your quarterback's going to be. But you also have to take into account now, how does that get perceived in the locker room by guys that have been there a while, and have given their heart and soul already to the franchise. So that will be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm not ready to say that he's done in Pittsburgh or it's going to blow up, but they definitely do have some type of damage control or things they got to work through.
It makes what Spytech talks about being intelligent and aggressive. I mean, I'm going to share this with you. I'm not going to tell you the team, but I knew a team once that was going to make a major acquisition. So they brought their captains in and said, listen, we're going to talk to you about this. We know we don't need your permission. If it leaks, we'll never talk to you again. But this is what we're thinking about doing. Here's why we're thinking about doing it. This is what his pay would be. The guy looked at one captain and said, I know that you're going to be underpaid with this contract. We're going to address that next offseason. We're telling you in front of everybody so you don't think we're trying to hide. I mean, and everybody was on board with it. And it just goes to show you that spy tech, we're going to be aggressive but intelligent approach really is the smart way in today's modern NFL, isn't it?
It is. You have to kind of take all factors into account, and you have to. Um, you don't want to just be kind of grasping at what the highest, the sexiest move is, or what the move, the move that everyone thinks you should make if it doesn't necessarily fit what your
Mhm.
overall goal is, or your overall vision.
Let's talk about the NFL draft. Fascinating to me the way this whole thing is going down. Um, I have been saying for months, talking to NFL people, this may be the deepest draft in a very, very long time, but the weakest at the most important position, which is quarterback. Uh, I had a general manager tell me months ago in Texas at the owners' meeting that he only had two quarterbacks in this draft that he had a first round grade on. And he thought as many as five or six would go in the first round. He told me the other night he's certain there's four, still thinks five could. And he just goes, it's baffling to me. He's got five running backs with first round grades. He told me, I don't even remember the last time I had five running backs with first round grades. It's such a deep draft. What are you thinking as we're approaching the draft? It's fascinating right now.
Well, I do think you're going to see more quarterbacks taken than our consensus, media first rounders, or first rounders in the public's eye. That seems to happen a lot these days, and I think that it just goes to show the nature of the position and the nature of what teams are looking for at quarterback, and they're always looking to find one. I don't know if it'll be. I can't say for certain it'll be 4 or 5, or if it gets to 6 like last year. I don't think it'll get to 6, but um, there will be more than just I think everyone's talked about obviously Cam Ward and Shador Sanders and Jackson Dart, but I think that you'll get at least one more guy that is going to go on Thursday night. But I do think when you look at the draft, at some positions like running back is getting a little bit of a resurgence in the eyes of the NFL because of the performance of Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and a few guys last season. So I think you might. I don't know if you'll see 5 guys drafted in the first round, but you're going to see a couple of running backs go. You're going to see maybe perhaps some more emphasis put on a position. And I do think that there are some spots in this draft where you can find a lot of talent, a lot of productive players. It's just that at that the main spot at quarterback, it's a weaker class.
Absolutely agree with you. So I'm going to ask you this. Where do you think the draft switches? And let me explain what I mean by that. Do you think Tennessee does something crazy? Do you think the Giants do something crazy? Where do you think is the first moment of the draft?
Tennessee, I think, takes Cam Ward. I think that's going to be a pretty standard pick. Um, I don't think the Browns do anything crazy at 2. Whether that means they take Travis Hunter, whether that means they take Abdul Carter, we'll see. I think,
Travis.
yeah, I think it's going to be Travis Hunter. I think that what the Giants do at 3 sets a big tone for the rest of the top 10, because if the Giants take Abdul Carter at 3, then I think you could see a not necessarily a huge slide for Shador Sanders, but you start to wonder, where does he go? Because I think a lot of people have mocked him to the Giants at 3. Obviously, then I think if he goes to the Giants at 3, then I think the Patriots gobble up Abdul Carter with the 4th pick. But if Abdul Carter's not there, then maybe they look to go offense. Maybe they look to trade and acquire more assets. So I think kind of the Giants, the draft starts with them. Uh, and I think what they do kind of sets the tone for the rest of the top 10, at least, to see if there's any, surprise picks, or any movement to get a quarterback if the Giants don't take one, or, you see how far a guy like Abdul Carter falls. I don't think it'll be very far if the Giants don't take him.
If I'm John Murray and Abdul Carter's on the board, and my people don't take Abdul, I fire everyone right there on TV. Just fire them. I just tell them, hand me the card before you send it in. I want to see it. I look at the card. If it doesn't say Abdul, you're all fired. And I write my own card, hand in Abdul Carter. I feel the same way for Tennessee. I feel the same way for the Browns. Now, I got to tell you, so talking to a couple of NFL executives earlier this week for my mock draft, all of them, I asked them, what's the, no, I'm not that smart. The first one tipped me off. He said, there's not been a lot of talk about trading. A lot of people, it's a very deep draft and a lot of bad drafting teams. So a lot of teams are sitting still. They're going to wait and see how things until draft night and see how far somebody drops and then move up to get people. So I asked a couple other people. They agreed that they're the little draft trading. People are calling asking what's it going to cost to trade up, but no real negotiations. What do you think of that? That tells you about the level of bad drafting teams.
Well, I think obviously you look at the teams are not going to be aggressive to move up until they see how the board shakes out. Um, there's probably a couple of prospects that those teams outside of, we're talking outside of the top 3 or 4 that they have high on their board that they would move up for, but they're waiting to see how things fall. I think that again, how that those third and fourth picks with the Giants in New England shake out, I think will go a long way to determine what moves are made. Because I do think that I think there will be. There's always draft night trades. Um,
Mhm.
I think that Adam Schefter predicted that the Eagles will make 1 or 2. Because a lot of those teams, that are always good, like Philly, Baltimore, usually is aggressive when they have to be. They're always drafting towards the back of the first round. They will wait it out and see what the board looks like, and if there's a move to be made. Where they can kind of be selectively aggressive and target somebody, they'll do it. But no one, unless you're trading up to get a quarterback, the way that we saw, the Bears when they took Mitch Trubisky, but they swapped with the Niners, and the following year when the Jets traded up with the Colts and drafted Sam Darnold. Unless you're trading up for a quarterback, and that's what you're going for and what you're going to get. The most recent one, of course, was the Panthers with the Bears with Bryce Young. You're not going to see a lot of big trades until the moment of truth when teams are going to act and pounce.
It's going to be fascinating to me. They're talking to these NFL executives. They think if Shador drops, which in their book they all think he's very overrated. None of them that these guys that I talked to had him with a first round grade. They had him with a high second, but not a first. They think if he gets down into the 20s, Cleveland's going to try to move back up and get him. What would you say when this draft is over if I said to you the Cleveland Browns, a la the Houston Texans a few years ago, come out of the draft with Hunter and Shador?
That would really be an interesting move. And honestly, I don't, depending on what they had to do to move back up into the first round to make that happen, I don't think it would be a bad move necessarily on paper. Now, we'll see how it works out. But I think that if that's what happens and you look at it when you come out, if you're a Browns fan, you say, okay, we got a generational prospect. And I think that term is way overused, but I think Travis Hunter legitimately is a generational prospect because of the versatility he has and how good he is at both spots. You get a generational prospect at 2. You didn't overdraft your quarterback, but you were aggressive and you got a guy that could potentially be your future at the position late in the first round, later in the first round. So I think if the Browns do that, I think I would come out of that draft as a Browns fan pretty happy overall.
All right. Having said that, I had an NFL executive say to me when I asked him, how do you read that? He said, this is exactly how I read the room. Deion Sanders is going to be the Cleveland Browns head coach at some point. He goes, if I'm the GM, if I'm the coach, I know I'm on my way out the door. I might as well call a moving company. He goes, that's when he said, I'd call Mayflower. Now, I don't even know if Mayflower is still in business, but that will tell the young kids
Yeah.
know what we're talking about. Us old guys do. But do you agree with that analysis? That's basically telling the coach you're out.
Well, I do think, and I have said this, I think that whoever takes Shador Sanders is going to, if the team gets off to a slow start, um, in addition to the calls for, say he's not the starter at the beginning of the year, let's just say, for example, or even if he is the starter at the beginning of the year, if the team gets off to a slow start, the calls are going to be there, whether they're, even if it's only on, the ESPN sports shows or Fox FS1, there's going to be the talk of, is Deion coming to be the next head coach? Is Deion coming to be the next head coach? And it is going to be a storyline that team has to deal with.
It's creating drama,
It is. It will.
and it's creating drama, and it's what Spytek talked about: aggressive but intelligent. You have to think about that kind of stuff, and it's just like there are teams. Nobody remembers Tim Tebow won a playoff game. He is a quarterback, and when you judge teams by successfully drafting quarterbacks, it's they pick a quarterback who takes them and wins a playoff game. Tim Tebow did that for the Broncos. Nobody seems to remember that. Do you remember that? Do you not?
Yeah, it beat the
And
Steelers.
yeah, and he didn't stay. I'm not pretending he was Bart Starr, but he didn't stay in the league probably as long as he should have because teams understood when you sign him, it just comes with such massive attention, and teams wanted to stay away from it. I've heard people say, well, teams didn't want him because of his Christian faith. That's stupid. That had nothing to do with it. That is dumb and it's not accurate. Teams didn't want him because it brought such massive attention and it overshadowed the team. My point to you is if there's a team that just seems to perpetually shoot itself in the foot, it's the Browns. So this would not surprise me.
No, it necessarily wouldn't, and I do think you would get those rumors, especially if they have another poor season, because I think that even though they were in the playoffs 2 years ago, and Kevin Stefanski's gotten into the playoffs twice and won a playoff game there, um, they just had a bad losing season. They're picking number 2 in the draft for a reason, so he's going to be under a little bit of pressure to begin with to start 2025, and if they get off to a bad start and they have Shador Sanders hanging around there, then the calls for Deion are going to start.
All right. Give me a name that you think is going to sneak into the first round that has no business in the first round that people aren't talking about.
I I think that when you look at the QBs, I think that you're going to see one or two of, so one, at least one, maybe both of Jalen Milroe and Tyler Shuck go in the first round. It's just the feeling I have. It might be a team trading back up that needs a quarterback that goes into the back end of the first round and gets them. But I think you're going to see a a guy who in Shuck who going to be 26 now. Maybe that's we're overthinking that a little bit, but a guy who wouldn't be a first round prospect in a normal year, would get drafted, but wouldn't be a first round prospect in a normal year where there was a stronger quarterback class. He could go in the first round, or a guy in Jalen Milroe who has a ton of physical gifts, but is so raw and doesn't have the production or the polish that teams are looking for. He wouldn't be a first round pick in a normal year. He'd be somebody that would go on day 2 or something, like that, as a developmental guy. Perhaps he could sneak into the first round, because of how desperate teams are in terms of trying to find that quarterback, and they might bet on traits. So I think
Yeah.
one or both of those guys.
Fascinating times, isn't it?
It is.
All right.
It's always fun.
What are your G men going to do? Are they smart
I
or
don't.
do they?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I want them to take Abdul Carter, assuming he's there at 3, because I think he will be. I think it's going to be Ward and Hunter to start the draft. I think he's the safest pick, maybe in the entire draft, and definitely the safest pick they can make at 3. Um, I would be okay with them taking him at 3 and then moving up from 34 in the second round, late into the first round, to take a quarterback, even if it's not necessarily a guy that would go in the first, but a guy they want to take a chance on. I could live with that. I can understand it. Um, but to me, I just think that taking Shador Sanders or Jackson Dart at 3 would be a mistake, because if you're looking at Shador Sanders, he comes in as your third quarterback to start behind Russell Wilson and James Winston, or Jameis, who you signed, is now your third quarterback, which wouldn't make any sense. It would be kind of foolish. And immediately the calls are out there for him to start, and you're going to get whispers that Deion's going to be the next quarterback of the Giants, or should be the next quarterback of the Giants, because Brian Dable's on the hot seat. Jackson Dart, I think, has some intriguing traits. I could see him being a type of guy that Brian Dable would want to work with. But I don't think he's worth the number 3 overall pick under any circumstances. I don't think that to me, I think the only quarterback who's worthy of a top 3 selection is Cam Ward, because he's the best one in the draft, and he has some physical tools that you can dream on and you can say could be big time in this league, depending on how he develops. So I'm certainly hoping that they take Abdul Carter and then kind of look to get a quarterback, either by trading back into the first round or with their first pick on Friday night at 34th overall.
Tell you a name to keep an eye on: Jalen Walker. Nobody has a bad thing to say about him. Everybody loves him, and the fans are not giving him the love that he earned, but the NFL sure is. That guy, uh, I had a executive tell me earlier this week for my mock draft. He said we have the same grade on him we had as Micah Parsons, and he said, and the highest comparison we had to Micah was Khalil. He goes, we had them with the same grade. He said, this is the best linebacker since Micah, and we think he same grade as Khalil. And he just said, this kid's an absolute stud. And so when I took his information and asked some other executives, hey, what do you think? What are you hearing? And I told them, I was told by one executive, they have the same grade on him as Micah, and they had the same grade on Micah as they did Khalil. Everyone agreed. Everyone said he's that good. I had one GM say to me, Abdul's the best player in this draft, but Jalen's too, and it's not close. He goes, we have Abdul, Jalen, and then he goes, we got Mason there, Will Campbell there. He goes, but man, he goes, I'm just telling you, he goes, uh, when I look at Jalen, he goes, Travis Hunter is there. He goes, but when I look at Jalen, he goes, I can't believe what he goes. I saw a mock draft the other day from somebody I respect. He said, and they had Jalen going in the, he goes, I think it was 26. He goes, I couldn't believe it. He goes, there's that many bad drafting teams. Keep your eye on Jalen Walker, brother.
I can see it. I think some people will bet on the traits, and will bet on the upside there sometime in the top 10, probably late top 10.
I agree with you. Hey, tell everybody where to find you on social media. Could you do that for me, please?
You can find me at Matt Haladig 919 on Twitter at MATTHLADIK 919. We're getting down to crunch time for the draft, so come over and give me a follow.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you.